Sophie sat by the window of the night train, staring at the darkness that blurred the landscape rushing past. She was on her way to visit her sister, whom she hadn't seen in years. Her compartment was empty until the train stopped at a small town, and a man in a black coat carrying a suitcase boarded. He sat directly across from her, even though most of the seats were vacant. "You look like you could use some company," he said with a charming smile. Sophie nodded politely, but something about him made her uneasy. His eyes were icy, his movements too smooth, too calculated. As the train sped through the night, the stranger began to talk, spinning stories of his travels, of places Sophie had never heard of. The more he spoke, the more unsettled she felt. Something was off. "And where are you headed?" he asked eventually. "To visit my sister," Sophie replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Ah, family visits," he said, smiling, though his tone had turned cold. "I just visited someone too, an old friend, though it was more of a farewell." Sophie's pulse quickened. She wanted the conversation to end, but the man leaned back and opened his suitcase. Inside was a stack of newspaper clippings. Each one showed a crime scene, each detail gruesome and horrifying. But one article made Sophie's blood run cold. Her face was in it. "You look just like the woman I've been searching for," he said quietly. "A chance meeting or destiny?" Panic surged through her. She jumped to her feet, ready to bolt from the compartment, but at that moment, the train stopped. The doors opened, and outside, police officers stood waiting. "Freeze!" one of them shouted. Sophie froze. The man had vanished. His suitcase sat empty on the seat. The officers stormed in, speaking urgently into their radios. "You're safe now," one of them told Sophie. "The man who was sitting across from you, we've been tracking him for months. He's a wanted serial killer. We had evidence suggesting you might be his next target, but he escaped. Again." Sophie could hardly breathe. "But why me?" The officer gave her a grim look. "He doesn't pick his victims at random. He chooses carefully. We need to figure out why he set his sights on you." As the train slowly began to move again, Sophie glanced at the empty seat across from her. On top of the suitcase lay a note. It had just one line: "See you soon, Sophie."